Hey everyone, it's Dr. RAMANI, and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships. And one of the big questions people have about narcissistic relationships is, can they change? Can they change? Can they change? Let's talk about if there is any change in a narcissistic relationship, the two different ways that this can look. I mean, honestly, it is the question. It is the question. They're going to change, they're going to change. Listen, I mean, and I've had the experience in the last couple of days that lots of people have been asking me the same question repeatedly. Can narcissistic people change? I mean, listen, it's tempting to say, nope, done, next question. But even I have to acknowledge it's not completely accurate and probably too simplistic a take. The more accurate answer to can narcissistic people change is not much, not a lot, not enough to undo the hurt that was caused in the relationship, not for the long term. Maybe a little change until they experience an ego injury and they start raging again. That's more of what we're talking about. The better answer to it, can a narcissistic person change, is not enough. Not enough to benefit a close, intimate relationship that was harmed. Not enough to fix the damage in any relationship. But when there are these small changes in narcissistic people, because small changes are possible, what do they look like? Because that's the question too. Honestly, there's two types of change, broadly spoken, that we can look for. One is when the narcissistic person starts doing good behaviors. These may be things like saying thank you, being on time, doing a task that they agreed to on time, saying something nice, doing something nice, emptying the dishwasher the first time you ask them. Perhaps the narcissistic person in your life did go into therapy. Perhaps you broke up for a minute and then restarted the relationship. Perhaps someone said something to them and then some good behaviors came. These may even happen spontaneously. For example, they are having a series of good days. They get a promotion or are happy about something. Now, when this happens, these little good changes show up. It obviously can play into the trauma bonding cycle and our willingness to justify and the hope that comes from these little positive changes. It certainly feels like it's in the right direction. They're often kind of small, like bringing flowers. These changes are rarely big things. When I say big things, I mean really taking accountability, making genuine apologies and genuinely making amends, consistent empathy. But these little changes are in the right direction, and they may lead you to believe that things can change. Well, they changed a little after all. Isn't there just lots of little changes, a big change? And so you might stay in the relationship longer. And these changes are also seductive changes because some of these changes may make your life easier. They may walk the dog in the morning. They may do a chore you needed done around the house. They may watch your kids. Then there's a second kind of change, and these are the changes that involve reducing the frequency of or stopping a behavior that was a problem. For example, not yelling as much, not reacting angrily when you ask them to do something, criticizing you less, not sending inappropriate text messages, not commenting on your weight, not comparing you to a sibling, getting through a meal without commenting on how much you're eating. So now we're removing a bad behavior. Basically, the abusive behavior, there's a little less of it. It comes down a little bit in frequency. Well, that is a change too, right? 5 times of being yelled at a day may drop to 1 or maybe none. That change, the drop in abusive stuff, it's still happening, but there's less of it. That change is even more powerful because it involves removing the thing that is not only harming you, which is great, but it's also part of that breadcrumbing model in a big way. We also know, behaviorally speaking, that when we remove something icky, like being yelled at, when we remove something icky, there's this cycle of negative reinforcement that gets into place. Basically, removing something bad is more rewarding than getting a reward, which is positive reinforcement. I'm not belaboring this. I tortured my undergraduates long enough with that. So this idea of change in narcissism, though, it's tricky. It's the adding of good behaviors is also the removal of bad ones. And most people will say that given a choice, they'd just prefer that they'd remove the bad behavior in this relationship. And if they had that, even though they know the relationship wouldn't be perfect, it could be more endurable and less harmful. While someone doing things like taking out the trash cans would be nice, Someone not yelling at you or betraying your trust would be better. The greatest challenge with narcissistic change is that when it happens, it may be small, it may be short term, it may be spotty, and it typically slips as soon as the narcissistic person is frustrated, disappointed, or experiencing some other form of ego injury. And on top of that, the narcissistic person may expect all of their changes to be recognized and praised, which is kind of the problem, right? They need everything recognized and praised. And if you are not enthusiastic enough about it, they will tell you that you will never be happy and nothing is enough for you, and that you expect too much. You can't win, right? Now, the other tricky change that can happen is when the narcissistic person is able to identify that their behavior is bad. For example, they are aware after they do something that something that they did is not cool. Like, I know I wasn't supposed to do that. I know I wasn't supposed to say that. It's hit or miss on whether you get an apology. But after a while, you may feel that, well, like, okay, they keep doing the bad things, but they also know they're doing them, and they say they know they did a bad thing and kind of apologizing, but that only works for so long. For them to keep behaving in a dysregulated way, for example, but then saying over and over again after they do it, yeah, that wasn't cool. Some people will say at least they're aware they're doing it, and that change might be enough for some, but many people will say they keep screaming and having the tantrums and keep doing the shady stuff, and then afterwards they say, yeah, I see I made a mistake, but after a while that wears thin. But it's sometimes seen as change. Oh, give him a break. He said he knows it's not cool. Again, the enabling. I have worked with a lot of narcissistic clients, and I've seen the small changes in therapy. Less yelling, less shady behavior. They take a minute to thank someone. They show up on time to sessions more often. They're more reflective on the idea that their behavior was bad. And as a therapist, as I made my notes, I would log that as change. But I also recognize that these changes still could not make up for the broken hearts of partners who were cheated on, children who were ignored, employees who were screamed at, and friends who felt used. So change is a very tricky conversation in narcissism. Yes, there may be change. The bigger question is it enough? And that will always be the issue, that whether it's the adding of some good behaviors, the removal of the bad ones, or the continually doing bad things but then saying, well, I know that was a bad thing. That whatever these changes look like, it can actually test you in terms of that trauma-bonded space. Many people have said to me, I kind of wish they didn't make these changes because I was clear as hell before. Now they're making these little attempts, and you actually feel like it's mean to step away, or you feel pity, like they're trying and now I feel bad and I'm stepping away, but they're trying. But even in the midst of the trying, there are still these bouts of rage. There are still the tantrums. There's still the unacceptable behaviors. And having someone 100 times behave badly, but 100 times say, I know that was wrong. Like I said, only you know your tolerances. But this, again, it's the question I get almost more often than any other. And as much as I want to give the simple pat answer of, no, they can't, I have to give the it's complicated answer. And the problem with the it's complicated answer is many people who hold that hope and wish that it could change will jump and glom and hold on to that. Well, you said there could be a little bit, but this is what the little bit looks like. And you have to ask yourself, is getting yelled at once a day workable compared to 5? Some of you may say yes. Is a person who remembers to walk the dog in the morning and bring in the trash cans enough? Some of you may say yes. Is a person who keeps doing the bad behaviors but now acknowledges they're not nice enough? Some of you may say yes. A lot of you may say no. Only you know the answer, but be very aware. These little micro changes, even though they might sort of test like, I guess there could be a little change, more than anything, they may actually strengthen the trauma bond as well as magnify that sense of pity and guilt that often keep people stuck in narcissistic relationships. Thanks again.